I thought I was many wicked things. I knew my flaws better than anyone. I was selfish sometimes. Impatient. I could be cold when I should have been warm. I could walk away from conversations I should have stayed in. I had lied before. Small lies. The kind people tell themselves are harmless. I knew all of this about myself. I had made peace with most of it. But there was one thing I never thought I was capable of. One line I was certain I would never cross. I never thought I would be the kind of woman who uses a man, who takes something from him without giving him the full truth of what she is, who lets him believe he means something, when really, he was just filling a space that loneliness had carved open inside her. I was wrong about myself. And the worst part is, I didn't find out until I was already on the other side of it. My name is Reyna Caldwell. I'm 24 years old. I served in the United States Army. And this is the story of the 3 weeks that showed me exactly who I was capable of becoming. When nobody was watching. Before any of this happened, I want you to understand something. I was raised by a father who treated women like they were made of something rare. My dad was not a perfect man. He had his own failures, his own complicated history. But there was one thing about him that never wavered. Not once in my entire life. He never forced. He never manipulated. He never took. I remember being maybe 9 years old sitting at the kitchen table while he washed dishes. He was telling me about a man he worked with who had treated a woman badly. He didn't go into details. I was too young for details. But I remember the way his jaw tightened when he talked about it. And I remember exactly what he said when he turned to look at me. Reyna, I want you to remember something for the rest of your life. Okay, Daddy. A real man never forces a woman into anything. Not a conversation. Not a commitment. Not a room. Not a bed. He pointed at me with the dish towel still in his hand. And the moment a man makes you feel like you have no choice, you walk away. You hear me? Yes, Daddy. Say it back. I walk away. He nodded. Went back to washing dishes. That was it. No big speech. No dramatic moment. Just a quiet Tuesday evening in a kitchen that smelled like dish soap and leftover dinner. But I never forgot it. Not once in 24 years. What I never expected was that the lesson I needed to learn wasn't about protecting myself from men like that. It was about making sure I never became the version of that. I enlisted when I was 22. It was not a difficult decision for me. My grandfather served. My uncle served. There was something in my blood that had always pulled toward it. Structure. Discipline. The idea of being part of something larger than your own small life. My mother cried when I told her. My father did not. He looked at me for a long moment, and then he nodded once. You're going to be fine, he said. How do you know? Because I know who you are. I hugged him for a long time that night, standing in the kitchen. Same kitchen where he had taught me that lesson 15 years earlier. I thought about that when I was leaving. I thought about how certain he was. How completely he believed in the person he thought I was. I did not want to disappoint him. I had no idea that in less than a year, I would spend every day wondering if he would still look at me the same way if he knew the truth. Basic training was everything I expected and nothing I was prepared for. I had done my research. I had talked to veterans. I had conditioned my body for months before I arrived. But nobody prepares you for what it does to your identity. The first day they take your name. Not literally, but effectively. You are no longer Reyna. You are your rank, your unit, your function. Everything that made you a specific human being with a specific history and specific people who loved you gets filed away, replaced with protocol, with performance, with the daily business of surviving inside a system that has no room for individuality. I am not complaining about that. I understood it was necessary. But I am telling you because you need to understand the state I was in when everything happened. I was not myself. Or maybe more accurately, I was a version of myself that had been stripped of every protective layer, every distraction, every comfort. And what was left underneath was someone I had never had to face directly before. His name was Sergeant Aaron Cole. He was 28. He was not my direct superior, but he was senior to me. He had been in for 6 years. He knew how everything worked. He knew the rhythms of that place in a way I was still trying to learn. The first time we spoke, it was nothing. A conversation during a break in training. He asked where I was from. I told him. He told me about his hometown. It was ordinary. The kind of conversation that happens 100 times a day in any environment where strangers are forced together. I did not feel anything particular toward him. He was just another person in that place. Which makes what happened next even harder to explain. It started slowly. The way things always do when you're not paying attention. Small conversations that ran a little longer than necessary. A look held a moment past what was appropriate. Nothing that crossed a line. Nothing I could point to and say there. That was the moment I should have walked away. But the loneliness of that environment was something I had underestimated completely. I had friends at home. Real ones. People who knew my full name and my history and the way I laughed at things that weren't funny just because I was nervous. In basic training, I had people around me constantly. And I had never felt more alone in my life. Aaron felt familiar in a way that nothing else in that place did. Not because he was special, but because he paid attention. He noticed things. The way my father had always noticed things. And in that stripped-down, vulnerable, exhausted version of myself, that attention felt like water in a desert. I drank it without thinking about what I was doing. The first night, I want to be honest about. Fully honest. Not the version that makes me look better than I was. We were alone in a common area. Late. Everyone else had gone. The conversation had shifted into something more personal than anything we had said before. He was talking about loneliness. About what this life does to you when you're away from everything familiar. And somewhere in that conversation something changed. I felt it change. And I made a choice. Not him. Me. I made a choice. I need to say that clearly because it matters. Because what came after matters. And because the difference between what Aaron did and what other men do was the thing I did not fully understand until much later. Aaron never pushed. He never assumed. He never made me feel like I had no choice. Every single time, and there were 3 nights, he stopped. He looked at me. And he asked. Not with grand romantic gestures. Just quietly. Is this okay? Every time. 3 nights. Every single time he asked. And every time I said yes. That was not him forcing anything. That was me choosing. Over and over again. Choosing wrong. But choosing. I think about my father's words a lot now. A real man never forces a woman into anything. Not a conversation. Not a commitment. Not a room. Not a bed. Aaron was not that kind of man. Which sounds like I'm defending him. I'm not. What we did was wrong for different reasons. He knew I was not in a position of true equals with him. He knew the environment we were in. He knew that loneliness and isolation create a kind of emotional debt that can look like desire. He knew all of that and he made his own choices. But he never forced. And I have had to sit with the complicated reality of that. Because I came into this thinking the story would be simple. I was taken advantage of. I was vulnerable and someone used that. And I could be angry. And I could be the victim. And everything would make sense. Except that's not the whole truth. The whole truth is harder. The whole truth is that I was a willing participant. That I made choices with full awareness. That I told myself stories about what it meant so I didn't have to face what it actually was. And that the person I was most unfair to was not myself. There was a man back home. His name was James. We had been together for 2 years before I enlisted. He was good to me. Genuinely good. The kind of good that is quiet and consistent and easy to overlook because it never demands to be noticed. He wrote me letters. Actual handwritten letters. Because he knew I loved them. He sent a care package in the 3rd week with my favorite snacks and a photograph of us from a camping trip the previous summer and a note that said only 4 words. I'm proud of you. I carried that note in my breast pocket. Every single day. Including the nights I spent with Aaron. I want you to understand what that means. I want you to understand that I was not confused about who I belonged to. I was not unclear about what I had at home. I knew exactly what James was to me. And I made those choices anyway. And then I folded his note back up and put it back in my pocket the next morning. Like it was nothing. Like he was nothing. He was not nothing. He was everything. And I treated him like a detail I could manage. The third night was the one that broke something in me. Not during. After. I lay there in the dark and I thought about my father standing at that kitchen sink. I thought about the way his jaw tightened. I thought about the dish towel and the smell of dish soap and the certainty in his voice. A real man never forces a woman. And I thought about Aaron asking me quietly if this was okay. Every time. And I thought about James writing letters in his careful handwriting. And sending photographs. And being proud of me. And I realized something in that dark room that I have not been able to unfeel since. The thing my father warned me about men who force. I had become the emotional version of that. Not physically. Never physically. But I had taken something from James without his knowledge or consent. I had made decisions about his life that were not mine to make. I had decided he didn't need to know. I had decided I could manage it. I had decided his trust was mine to spend however I needed. That is a kind of force. Quiet. Invisible. But force nonetheless. And I was the one wielding it. I ended it with Aaron the next day. He accepted it without argument. Which somehow made it worse. Because it confirmed what I already knew. He had never been invested the way I had let myself pretend. I was not a person to him. I was a decision he had made and then unmade. And I had let that happen. I had handed him that power without even realizing I was doing it. Walking away from that conversation, I felt something I had not expected. Not relief. Not guilt. Just a very quiet and very complete clarity. About who I had been in those 3 weeks. About what I was capable of when nobody was watching. About the distance between the person my father believed I was and the person I had actually been. That distance felt enormous. I didn't know yet if I could close it. I called James that night. I sat outside for a long time before I dialed. The sky was very dark. Very clear. The kind of sky you only see when you're far from the city. I looked at it for a while. Then I called. He answered immediately. Reyna. Hey, you okay? First thing. Always first thing. Are you okay? I started crying before I said a word. Hey. Talk to me. What happened? James. I'm here. I need to tell you something. A pause. Long enough that I knew he understood something was coming. Okay, he said quietly. So I told him. All of it. The first night. The second. The third. The note in my breast pocket that I carried the entire time. I told him everything. He did not say a word until I finished. When I stopped talking, the silence lasted a long time. Then he said something I will never forget for the rest of my life. Did he ever make you feel like you had no choice? Of all the questions he could have asked. That one. No, I said. He always asked. Every time. Another silence. Then this was your choice. Not angry. Not cruel. Just clear. Yes, I whispered. Okay, he said. James, I need some time, Reyna. I know. I'm not saying it's over. I'm saying I need time. Whatever you need. And I need you to understand something. Okay. His voice was so quiet. Like he was choosing each word very carefully. The fact that he never forced you. That doesn't make what you did smaller. It makes it bigger. Because every single time you chose. The line went quiet. I know, I said. I know you know, he said. That's actually the only reason I'm still on this phone. James took 3 weeks to call me back. 3 weeks of silence that felt like the longest of my life. I did not call him. I did not text him. I gave him the space he asked for. Because it was the least I could do. And because somewhere in those 3 weeks I started to understand something. Giving someone space when they ask for it is not a grand gesture. It is the minimum. It is the absolute baseline of what you owe someone you have hurt. And I had spent 3 weeks in that military base taking up space I had not been given. Inside a situation I had not been invited into honestly. Inside someone's trust one had not been given permission to spend. The least I could do was be still now. And wait. And face what I had done without running from it. He called on a Sunday evening. I was sitting outside watching the sun go down. I answered immediately. Hi, he said. Hi. Silence. But different from before. Softer somehow. I've been thinking a lot, he said. I know. About us. About you. About what you told me. Okay. And I keep coming back to one thing. What? You told me. I waited. You didn't have to. I never would have known. You could have come home, and it would have just been a thing that happened, and I would have spent the rest of my life not knowing. Yes. But you told me anyway. Yes. A long pause. Why? I thought about it. Properly thought about it. Not the answer that sounded good. The true one. Because I thought about every morning, I said finally. Every morning I would wake up and know something you didn't. And I would look at you, and you would trust me completely. And I would know that trust was sitting on top of a lie. I took a breath. I couldn't build a life on that. I didn't want to. Not with you. James was quiet for a moment. That's the right answer, he said softly. I mean it. I know you do. A pause. That's still the right answer. I am not going to tell you James and I are fine. We are not fine. Fine is not the right word for where we are. We are in something harder and more honest than fine. We are in the work of rebuilding trust that I broke with my own hands. Some days it goes well. Some days he goes quiet in a way that tells me he is somewhere inside those 3 weeks, and there is nothing I can do but wait for him to come back. I don't rush him. I don't explain. I don't defend. I just wait. Because that is what you do when you have taken something from someone. You stop taking. You start giving. Even when it is slow. Even when it is uncomfortable. Even when you are not sure it will ever be enough. I think about my father a lot these days. About that kitchen. About that dish towel. About that lesson he taught me when I was 9 years old that I thought was about protecting myself from a certain kind of man. I understand it differently now. I understand that the lesson was never just about men who force. It was about recognizing force in all its forms. Visible and invisible. Loud and quiet. And understanding that you are capable of it too. In your own way. In your own quiet choices. In the spaces between what you do and what you tell yourself about what you do. My father said a real man never forces a woman into anything. I would add something to that now. A real person never takes what they haven't been honestly given. Never spends trust that isn't theirs. Never decides for someone else what they can handle knowing. I violated all 3 of those things. And I have to live with that. Not as punishment. As information. About who I was. And fuel. For becoming someone different. If you are listening to this, and you have done something you are not proud of. Something that lives in the gap between who you thought you were and what you actually did. I want to say something to you. That gap is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a more honest one. The person you want to be is not gone. They are just waiting for you to stop pretending the gap doesn't exist. Face it. Name it. Tell the truth about it to the person who deserves to hear it. And then do the slow, unglamorous work of becoming someone who doesn't leave that gap behind them everywhere they go. It is not easy. It is not fast. It does not come with applause. But it is the only way I know to close the distance between who you are and who you always believed yourself to be. My father told me once that he thought I was going to be fine. Because he knew who I was. I am still working on proving him right. Some days I think I'm getting there. Some days the kitchen feels very far away. But I keep going back to it. That smell of dish soap. That dish towel. That quiet certainty in his voice. A real man never forces a woman. I am not a man. But I understand now what he meant. And I am doing everything I can to be worthy of that lesson. Even now. Even after everything. Especially after everything.